Hello and welcome. Today we're going to walk through the Human Research Protection Program process from the IRB staff perspective, specifically for studies that involve a single IRB or SIRB. Many investigators are familiar with submitting applications in Erica, but they often wonder what happens behind the scenes after they submit a reliance consultation request, what the HRPP is responsible for when an external IRB is involved, and what responsibilities remain after approval is granted. This video will help answer those questions and provide a practical look into the process so you can better understand what happens after your application leaves your desk and arrives on ours. We'll discuss what the HRPP is and how it differs from the IRB, our responsibilities when an external SIRB serves as the reviewing IRB, what happens after you submit a reliance consultation request, how HRPP review and activation work, and finally, what investigators are still responsible for after approval and activation. Let's begin with a common source of confusion: the difference between the IRB and the HRPP. When people hear HRPP, they often assume it means the IRB. In reality, the Human Research Protection Program is much broader. An HRPP is the institution wide system responsible for protecting the rights, safety, and welfare of research participants. That system includes institutional leadership, investigators and research teams, compliance offices, ancillary committees, training programs, quality assurance activities, and the IRB itself. Think of the IRB as one important component within a much larger framework. The HRPP exists to ensure that research is conducted ethically, safely, and in compliance with federal regulations, state law, accreditation requirements, and institutional policy. A useful way to think about this is the IRB reviews research. The HRPP oversees the entire system that supports ethical research. The IRB focuses on regulatory review and approval. The HRPP ensures all of the other institutional responsibilities are met, including investigator qualifications, conflict of interest management, training, ancillary reviews, institutional policies, and quality oversight. This distinction becomes particularly important when IRB review is conducted by an external institution. Common misconception is that when an external IRB takes over review responsibilities, the local institution no longer has obligations. That's not true. When we rely on an external IRB, we are only transferring the primary ethical and regulatory review. The University of Utah still retains significant responsibilities. Our role shifts from serving as the reviewing IRB to ensuring local institutional requirements are met. For example, we remain responsible for local context review, institutional compliance and reporting, investigator oversight, training verification, conflict of interest management, ancillary reviews, communication with the reviewing IRB, and ongoing local oversight. In other words, reliance changes our role, but it does not eliminate it. So, what exactly are we agreeing to when we sign a reliance agreement? The reviewing IRB relies on us to provide and oversee important local information. Specifically, we agree to provide local context, identify state law requirements, manage conflict of interest reviews for our personnel, ensure required ancillary reviews occur, verify qualifications and training, monitor investigator compliance, report local issues, and coordinate communications. The reviewing IRB simply cannot know everything about every institution participating in a study. They depend on local HRPP offices to provide that expertise. In addition to reliance agreement obligations, we also have responsibilities arising from federal requirements through OHRP, accreditation standards, and university policies. The University of Utah's accreditation requires us to maintain high standards for participant protection, ethical review, conflict management, and continuous quality improvement. This means that even when another IRB is reviewing the study, we still must actively oversee research occurring at our institution. Next, let's talk about the Reliance Consultation Request, called the RR by the IRB staff. This form is usually the first step in initiating a reliance process. Investigators submit the RR through ERICA to either request that the University of Utah serve as the reviewing IRB or request reliance on an external IRB. This submission connects you with the Reliance team. The purpose is to establish a regulatory strategy, determine feasibility, discuss roles and responsibilities, and provide guidance regarding next steps. Think of the RR as the starting point for the entire reliance process. After you submit a reliance request, the information is routed into our internal agreements management system. The Reliance team receives a notification each time a new form is submitted and can review all incoming requests. Internally, we operate on a rotating schedule. Each week, one team member is assigned responsibility for incoming submissions. That person reviews requests and determines appropriate next steps. Some requests result in a fee quote, a support letter, additional correspondence, a consultation call, or initiation of reliance discussions. From the investigator's perspective, it may look like nothing is happening. Behind the scenes, however, we are evaluating the request and determining the best path forward. The reliance reviewer for that week reviews each RR and decides whether the item needs to be referred to a specific team member or an email can be sent instead. Some RRs are referred for scheduling a conference call. Items that are ready for reliance negotiation but have no submitted ERICA application are put into holding until they are submitted. One question we hear frequently is, why hasn't reliance been finalized yet? In many cases, we wait until an ERICA application has been submitted before completing reliance negotiations. There are several reasons for this. First, not every project ultimately moves forward. Second, reliance negotiations require significant effort and documentation. Third, the ERICA application serves as our central institutional record. Without that application, we cannot properly document reliance activities or begin many aspects of our review process. Once the project is moving forward, the reliance process begins. The university and the reviewing IRB negotiate the terms of the relationship. This may involve reliance agreements, letters of acknowledgement, local context questionnaires, consent language reviews, and institutional profile updates. Every reviewing IRB handles these requirements a little differently. Some maintain institutional information on file, others request updated information for each study. Once reliance is established, the ERICA application can proceed through the local review process. At this point, the process begins to look more familiar. Ancillary reviews occur first. Depending on the study, these might include conflict of interest, investigational pharmacy, radiation safety, data security, and other specialized reviews. After ancillary reviews are complete, the application enters HRPP pre-review. This is the point when our review timeline officially begins and the process clock starts. Although the external IRB conducts the ethics review, we still evaluate local requirements and institutional obligations. Let's pause for a moment and talk about IRB review timelines. The IRB provides general review timelines to assist the research community with expectations for application progress. The SIRB Reliance team makes efforts to follow the IRB's guidance on this topic posted on the IRB website. However, studies using an external SIRB have slightly different review process considerations, and the IRB acknowledges the unique priorities of multi-site researchers, such as accelerated approval expectations, competitive enrollment timelines, and most importantly, urgent need for access to investigational treatment options for patients. Provide estimates for the local Human Research Protection Program review process at the University of Utah. These timelines are an estimate only and may change depending on IRB workload capacity, staffing coverage, and institutional priorities. Amendments, continuing reviews, progress updates, and final project reports follow the IRB's general submission schedules. In some cases, reviews do not begin and processing cannot be completed until after required fees are logged into Erica. A common source of confusion is the content still required in Erica when we are the relying HRPP. Investigators sometimes assume that because another IRB is reviewing the study, certain sections can be skipped. That typically is not the case. Many pages exist because other institutional offices use that information. Examples include the Investigational Drug Data Form. The IDDF page is where the investigational pharmacy pulls information. They will always need this page, regardless of whether we are the IRB or someone else is. Specific language is required by SIRSO related to MyChart recruitment, and OSP needs the DSS number in the Erica application to link our application to their process. We also review the local consent document. The SIRB asks us to do this as part of the Reliance Agreement negotiations. Even if the university is not the reviewing IRB, those institutional stakeholders still require information to complete their responsibilities. Eventually, you will receive a letter indicating that HRPP review is complete. What does that actually mean? It means our review has progressed as far as possible without final approval from the reviewing IRB. We have completed local review and identified any information that must be incorporated by the reviewing IRB. At this point, we are waiting for final site-specific approval from the reviewing IRB and final approved consent documents for our site. We encourage investigators to share the HRPP review complete letter with the reviewing IRB. It helps document the local review process and supports final approval decisions. I've mentioned the terms local context and local considerations a couple of times now. What do those terms mean? In an SIRB model, the reviewing IRB is responsible for ethical review on behalf of all participating sites. To make informed decisions, the SIRB relies on each institution to provide information about its local research environment. Local context refers to site-specific information that may affect the conduct or review of research, including state and local laws and regulations, institutional policies and procedures, local standards of care, community or cultural considerations, populations served by the site, and required consent language and HIPAA requirement. Local considerations are additional factors the SIRB must understand to appropriately oversee research at a specific site, such as conflict of interest management requirements, ancillary committee reviews, institutional restrictions or requirements, site-specific recruitment practices, or special protections for vulnerable populations. Although the SIRB conducts the IRB review, the relying institution's HRPP remains responsible for supporting human subject protections and providing essential local information. HRPPs communicate applicable laws, policies, and institutional requirements to the SIRB and provide site-specific consent language and local requirements. Some IRBs collect this information through a local context questionnaire. These questionnaires help the IRB build a contextual picture of our site. Ideally, each relying HRPP has an institutional profile available that contains information about their community that changes infrequently and shouldn't need to be provided for each study. Examples of profile information include the age of majority in your state or who your institutional official is. That information can be posted publicly and accessed by the SIRB on an as-needed basis. Local context questionnaires can then be study-specific and only ask information about the site that is relevant to the study at hand. This requires the SIRB to be intentional about their local context questionnaires, and unfortunately, many IRBs have template questionnaires that ask for profile information each time, and some IRBs will not move our site approvals forward until their questionnaire is completed, which can be difficult if it mixes profile information with context information that is reliant on our local HRPP review for completion. If you receive a local context questionnaire from your SIRB, the University of Utah Reliance team will help you complete it. Here's how that works. The University of Utah completes its institutional review and documents the outcome through the HRPP Review Complete letter issued through ERICA. At that point, we can provide the necessary local context information to the SIRB on your behalf. If your SIRB requires a local context questionnaire, please send it directly to your assigned Reliance reviewer after submitting the Reliance request. Once the request is in our Reliance system, we can track the questionnaire and ensure it is completed and submitted at the appropriate time. We do not recommend uploading these questionnaires into Erica, as documents attached there are not tied directly to Reliance workflows and may not reach the appropriate reviewers. We know some SIRBs require these questionnaires be completed and sent to them before they will complete their review or approval for our site. This highlights an important aspect of the Reliance process. While there are overarching regulatory requirements for all research, Reliance review processes often vary significantly from one institution to another. As a result, navigating the process can be complex and frequently requires institution specific solutions. Differences between institutional and SIRB processes are common and should generally be expected in reliance relationships. Although the intent of the SIRB mandate was to reduce administrative burden, implementation has varied across institutions. National organizations such as Smart IRB have worked to promote greater consistency, and the University of Utah has been actively involved in those efforts. Our team is committed to working with you to provide greater visibility into timelines and escalation points if concerns arise. One of the most important concepts in today's presentation is HRPP activation. Many investigators mistakenly assume that external IRB approval means they can begin research activities immediately. That's not correct. Before research may begin locally, two things must occur. One, the external IRB must approve the site. Two, the University of Utah must issue HRPP activation. Activation confirms that all local institutional requirements have been satisfied. This is the university's official authorization to proceed. Without activation, participant recruitment and research activities cannot begin. Beginning research before receiving activation constitutes local noncompliance and must be reported. After we send you the letter that says the HRPP review is complete, the IRB staff are waiting for you to send us the final SIRB approval for Utah and the final consent documents for our site. Make sure the approval letter from the SIRB is dated after the HRPP review complete letter. The SIRB should be including the results of our local review in their approval considerations for our site. We look over the final consents you send us to make sure our requirements are included. We don't stamp consent documents since the SIRB is giving you approval and expiration dates. Once activation is granted, our responsibilities do not end. The reviewing IRB handles continuing review, amendments, and ethical oversight. However, the university still remains responsible for local oversight. We continue to monitor investigator qualifications, training, COI management, local ancillary requirements, local reportable events, and study closure activities. Remember, reliance does not eliminate local responsibilities, it redistributes them. The investigator and their study team are responsible for ensuring required HRP fees are paid, even if a notification isn't sent. Use your fee quote, the information on the IRB website, or ask the IRB for a schedule of fees to help you with this. Ensuring changes to personnel are reported to the SIRB and the University of Utah HRPP. If a conflict of interest management plan is issued for a member of your study team, ensure the plan is reported to the lead investigator and the SIRB, and that the terms of the plan are implemented both locally and centrally. Remember, if progress updates are required for your study here in Utah, these are not routinely reviewed by the IRB staff, so we cannot help you remember to track and submit these items. Even in an externally reviewed study, several items must still come through Erica. These include personnel changes. You must verify qualifications, training, and conflicts of interest. Changes to local consent language. You need to ensure required local information remains accurate. Recruitment changes, especially when PHI access or data sharing is involved. HIPAA related changes. Local privacy obligations may still require review. Unanticipated problems and non-compliance. These remain reportable through institutional processes. Final project reports. We are legally required to track research occurring at our institution and properly close records. These submissions help us meet our obligations under reliance agreements, federal regulations, accreditation requirements, and institutional policy. I'd like to leave you with four main takeaways. First, the HRPP is much broader than the IRB. Second, reliance on an external IRB does not remove local institutional responsibilities. Third, HRPP activation is required before research may begin at the University of Utah. And fourth, investigators still have ongoing submission and reporting responsibilities through ERICA, even when an external IRB is involved. Understanding these responsibilities helps studies move more smoothly and ensures we continue protecting research participants while maintaining compliance. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate everything you do to support ethical and compliant research.